Happy to see everyone this morning. Brother Richard, is he okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry about him. We've got Richard out, and Lindsay's teaching. Charlie and Robin are in Jasper, or Valley View. Is that actually a Dora? What is the actual parish address? Lee showered and dressed, was pretty much ready to come, and she ran out of gasoline, and she had to sit down for a while, and so that explains her absence. But anyway, we got the Bunns are back with us. Glad of that, and a number of others though are out. I wanted to thank Brother Gene for taking care of the sermon last Sunday, and Charlie for the class. I didn't mention that on Wednesday night, but I enjoyed being at Harpersville very much. It's been a long time since I'd been there, and the good group, as I mentioned. I did say a few things about it Wednesday night. In our readings for this morning, we go actually through 19, 10. If you keep the idea of the kingdom, Jesus Christ being the king of his kingdom, before your mind, I think that's helpful. We mentioned in 5, 6, and 7 the constitution of the kingdom. 8 and 9, miracles that established the fact that he had the authority to speak as he did. They were astonished, for he spoke as one who had what? Authority, not as the scribes. And that's in 8 and 9. Then in 10, he sends out the apostles on what? The limited commission. That's right, the commission of the king. And then in 11, the people reject John and as well as Jesus, the rejection of the king and his forerunner. In 12, which is where we are in our study today, there's been a number of people, well, the Pharisees are very what toward Jesus? Trying to kill him. They're hostile. Brother Bowles in his commentary has the first 21 verses as opposition to Jesus, opposition to the king. 13, whole chapter is pretty much given over to the P word. Parables, good, the parables. And they start with the sower and continue on with the tares and so on, showing not only how the kingdom would start, but difficulties that would come, the value of it, and the dragnet, dealing with the fact that there are all kinds that will be included, but eventually God will make a separation. In 14 and 15, you've got 2 chapters that deal with different opinions of Jesus. For instance, in the first part, Herod thought Jesus might be somebody. Who? John the Baptist, risen from the dead. And then a little later, he walks on water, and the apostles think, well, they declare, surely thou art of a truth thou art the Son of God. I'm looking at verse 33. In chapter 15, the Pharisees think that Jesus is simply a violator of what? Their traditions. That's right. And so he withdraws. He feeds the 4,000 at the end of chapter 15. In chapter 16, there's the announcement of the what is going to be established. The church, yeah. We have things before that, but he announces the church, and then for the very first time he announces he's going to have to go to Jerusalem and suffer. Look at 16:21. From that time began Jesus to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things of the elders and chief priests, scribes, be killed, the third day be raised up. And that's where Peter remonstrates with him. Oh, no, this will never be. And Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. Yes, if he followed Peter's work, it would have been doing Satan's will. In 17, Jesus is what before Peter, James, and John? Transfigured, the transfiguration of the king. And then we have how some of the apostles could not heal an epileptic. Ends in 17 with a miracle, Jesus, about the paying of the half shekel. In 18, the apostles are concerned about who's going to be first in the kingdom. And he takes a little child and says, except you turn and become as a little child, you shall in no wise enter. And then he talks about the fact that whatever we do, don't do what? Or cause others to what? Stumble. That's exactly right. And then he explains it with a parable in 21 through the end. In 19, the Pharisees ask him about what? The marriage and divorce primarily. And then he gives he goes all the way back to Deuteronomy 24 or Genesis 2. How far does he go back? Genesis 2, yes, God's original will. And then we have the account with the rich young ruler. All right, so we have, hope you're keeping up with all of that. And as we go on now with our study of Jesus' life, wanted to say a few more things about where we were Wednesday night. Let's first of all think about where we are. We have the years of preparation with the birth of John, the birth of Jesus, and the early work of John. Point number 2 is Jesus' what? Early ministry, beginning with, always keep that in his own what? Baptism. And then immediately he's driven in the wilderness to be tempted. And we have the early work of John, or not the early work of John, but Jesus going back, and according to the book of John, we have those early disciples of John the Baptist who are pointed to Jesus. John 1, remember the 5, Andrew, and he goes and gets his brother Peter. We have an unnamed disciple who is John the apostle. Who's next? Philip, and then Philip goes and gets Nathanael. So we have 5 disciples there in John 1. And they will be among the apostles that we'll get to here in just a little bit. All right, so they're following John, and then John says, oh, you need to follow Jesus. He is the what of God that takes away the sins of the world. The Lamb of God, John 1:29. All right, and so John 2, they go up to Cana where he turns water to wine. Capernaum quickly, then back to Jerusalem where he cleanses the temple. All right, John 3. What is that, Janet? Nicodemus, right. John 4, woman at the well. And then he goes up. Well, I left it out. He's going up. That's really the transition into the great what? The great Galilean ministry. And so he leaves Judea, goes through Samaria, woman at the well, comes to Cana where he heals the nobleman's son over in Capernaum, goes to Nazareth where he's what? Rejected. And then he goes to Capernaum, makes it his own city, and calls the 4 disciples who are washing their nets right there by the Sea of Galilee, teaches in the synagogue, heals Peter's mother-in-law, tours Galilee, heals a leper, to cast out demons. Then the paralytic through the roof, calls Matthew, who is a tax collector, defends the disciples for feasting rather than fasting, and then he attends a feast and heals a lame man down in Jerusalem, and we record that back in John chapter, only one place, John chapter 5. Remember, we've went through 4 with the woman at the well and the healing of the nobleman's son in Capernaum. And then 5, we have that with the chapter 5 with his being back in Jerusalem. Now, quick question. Let's think about the time element. All right, we have in John 2 the first Passover mentioned during his ministry. And so you got a few months behind that with this beginning ministry. So you got the Passover in John 2, and then the Passover in John 5. And we've already done that. So where are we in the ministry of Jesus? Brother? That's right, the second year. A whole year has passed, probably a year and 3 to 6 months, and so he's now into the second year. And so that's where we are time-wise. And the time continues on up here in Galilee. After that, we have the problem with the healing of the lame man in Jerusalem. I say that there was not a problem with what Jesus did, but the problem that the Jews thought was that he did it on what? On the Sabbath day. So we have some Sabbath day violations that are kind of right in a row. Jesus in Matthew 12 and Mark 2 plucked the grain on the Sabbath day, and we talked about that a week or so ago. Then he heals the man with the withered hand on the Sabbath, and that was prompted by their asking him, what? Exactly. Is it right to heal on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And he answered their question with a question. Is it right to do good? If you have a sheep or an ox, and he goes, did the law forbid any of that, by the way? It was not, no, it didn't. It was not a case of, well, necessity overrides law. That's not it at all. The law just did not condemn that. That was not a part of, and so that was the case there. And so Jesus healed the man with the withered hand. And so what did they want to do to him? Along with the Pharisees, join hands with the Herodians, and they seek to do what to him? To kill him, to destroy him. So he said, I've got my rights. How dare you say that to me? I'm the Son of God. Is that what Jesus did? No, he what? He withdraws himself. And that's where we were. I want to call attention to that, and I will make a couple of 2 or 3 ideas on this, actually more than what I made Wednesday night. Are you with me in Matthew 12? In verse, Matthew follows he quotes from Isaiah, where Isaiah had predicted that the Messiah's conduct would be exactly what we find in Jesus. Just read it with me. Jesus, perceiving it, withdrew from thence, that is from where they were, and many followed him. And we're going to see from where, especially in Mark's account. And he healed them all. And he charged them that they should not make him known, that it might be fulfilled. Here's a key to Matthew, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken through Isaiah the prophet, saying, Behold my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit on him, and he shall declare judgment to the Gentiles. I've got a chart on this. The Messiah would do God's will. God would be pleased with what he was doing. God was pleased with what Jesus was doing in the healing of various ones as well as his withdrawal. In verse 19, his reaction to his enemies. He shall not strive, some of your translations have quarrel, nor cry aloud, neither shall anyone hear his voice in the streets. He's not going to physically resort to violence to press his point home. He's going to withdraw himself from those. It's interesting that in the limited commission, when Jesus told in Matthew 10, he said, if they begin to persecute you, simply do what? Go to another city. And it's in that context he says, be you wise as serpents and harmless as doves. It's that context. Watch out from where you, but be harmless. Don't counter. And you think about the way the apostles did business. Paul, when it was a matter of push comes to shove and we're going to be persecuted for righteousness' sake, we take it. But we don't invite it. And so on several occasions, Paul would, like Jesus, would remove himself from where, you think about in Thessalonica, Acts 17. They assaulted Jason's house, and Paul went on from Thessalonica to Athens, or Berea rather, then to Athens, and then on down to Corinth. And so you go where people will listen. And yes, sir, Tommy. Exactly. That's exactly right. They didn't invite it just to be persecuted. They took it if there was no way out.
Yeah,
But at the same time, they tried to avoid it. You avoid it, but you don't answer it in kind. You don't answer it by taking your spear and spearing them. So you don't answer in kind, and we'll see that But anyway, that's his reaction to his enemies. Then in verse 20, his reaction to his followers. Yes.
Paul was that way. He didn't divide.
That's right. Yeah. It never.
He got it bad, but he didn't divide.
Yes, exactly. We'll come back to that in just a minute, Tommy. In verse 20, his reaction to his followers. A bruised reed shall he not break, smoking flax shall he not quench. And this would continue until his mission was accomplished, and he would be successful. Remember what one of the 7 sayings on the cross, it is finished. He accomplished the Father's will, everything he wanted, till he sent forth judgment, or God's will, his teaching unto victory. Truth will be victorious. And in his name shall the Gentiles hope. That's just a prophecy that the whole scheme of redemption was looking toward whom? Everybody, Gentiles included. All right, I wanted to go back through that and wanted to emphasize that Matthew's account here shows the connection between Jesus' treatment on the part of the Pharisees, how they hated him, despised him, and his reaction to all that, and how that fulfilled Isaiah 41. And then in Mark's account, let's go over to Mark. Mark 3. Are you there with me? Landon, why don't you read, I want you to read, if you will, 7 through 12. Those are the passages that we have. And I want you to notice the difference. There's not anything said about thus fulfilled Isaiah 41 or anything like that, but I want you to notice the crowds that followed, where they were from, and then what Jesus did, the activities of Jesus among them. Notice those 2 things. Okay, Landon? All right, I'll come back to this, but you'll notice in 7 and 8, all the geographical regions represented by the people who were following Jesus. And I found it interesting that, and in fact, I drew a line from one phrase to the other. Jesus with his disciples withdrew, and a great multitude. And then look down in right before verse 9, Tyre and Sidon, a great what? Great multitude. You know, the Bible never exaggerates. We've got thousands of people, evidently. In fact, when you remember when he fed how many with 5 loaves and 2 fish? 5,000. That excluded 2 groups of people, women and children. So it's variously estimated at 12, 15,000 people he may have fed with 5 loaves and 2 fish. So when the Bible speaks of great multitudes, it's not saying, they had 15 or 20 there. There thousands are pressing in on him, and they come from all these places. So you've got the following emphasized, and then you have, that goes down really through verse 9, and then in 10 through 12, you have the activities of Jesus. And in a nutshell, what did he do? 10, 11, and 12. Two ideas, really, maybe. He healed the sick, and he cast out demons. Right. So could you truthfully say that Jesus is healing them of physical problems as well as spiritual problems? Could you say that? I believe you could. He's casting out demons. That's the spirit world. Well, they could see the effects of that. Though they might not see the spirits, they could see the effects of the spirits on the people leaving them. Just like they might not see the necessary, the diseases, but they could see the effects of them leaving. And that kind of goes back to Mark 2, when Jesus healed the paralytic who was let through the tiles of the roof. He said, son, thy sins be forgiven. And then when they objected to that, Pharisees did, Jesus said, well, which is easier to say, your sins be forgiven, or what? Take up your bed and walk. So that you might know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. He has the ability to do that. He showed them he did by saying, take up your bed and walk. And so the idea of the physical healings proved that he had the ability to take care of them spiritually. And I'll tell you what, guys, that is a wonderful, wonderful, helpful idea. If we believe in the miracles of Jesus, regardless of what we've done, said, thought, kinds of problems we've gotten ourselves in, the Lord is able to do what? He's able to relieve us of them. And of course, there's the penitence on our part. But what starts it off is the confidence that he's able to do it. I may have told you about Eddie Bellman, who is dead and gone now, but he had been cursed like a sailor. But through a couple up in Athens, he learned the truth, eventually obeyed it, and he died about our second or third year in Athens. It was around 2001, I believe he died. But he would tell me, he said, Philip, it's just hard for me to believe that the Lord could forgive somebody like me. And, when you've done so much as he had, he'd been, what do you call it, not a lifetime. He'd been in the Army all of his life, well, all of his adult life, pretty much. What do you call that? Not a lifetime, but a career. Yeah, thank you, Janet. Career military man. But anyway, he'd said a lot of things, done a lot of things, and he said he just found it hard for the Lord. And I told him several things about it. I said, well, if Paul could be saved, who was responsible for killing Stephen, in part killing Stephen, and persecuting a lot of other Christians, you didn't do that. And I said, he's able to do that, but just the very power of the Lord. And I use this, not this particular, but if Jesus performed miracles of healings that really showed his power to do to do similar things spiritually, then it's just a matter of confidence, belief in his power. He can do that, regardless of where I've been. The harder the cases were for healings, and Jesus would heal them just like nothing, the more confidence people should have had. All right, so anyway, we have that there. We didn't answer our questions. We'll do that, and then I didn't have very many. Yes, sir.
I find it interesting there in verse 12, and he strictly ordered them not to make him known.
Mm-hmm.
Who is he ordering them not to make him known?
Yeah, I take it to be all of these people. Not just the ones he had healed, but all of these followers, because they're unable really to represent him correctly so far.
And this is just a thought, but in the context of the verse before,
Mm-hmm.
he's talking about casting out these spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And they fell down before him and cried out to him, you are the Son of God. Is he there commanding the spirits not to make him?
I think it'd be the people, Landon. I believe it'd be the people, because there are other occasions. I'm thinking a little bit later on where he'll tell somebody who's not, yeah.
But just the way that it flows within that,
Mm-hmm.
within that reading there.
Yes, that's true. And yet the spirits were in the people, though. They were in the people. to command the spirits not to make him known. It could be like in Acts 16, where Paul and Silas, when they said these are servants of the Most High God, and Paul didn't want that good news to come from those sources. Could be.
And the only reason I point that out is just with the point that you were making. He is showing that he has the power over the physical and the spiritual there in these healings. And that just further, if it is that he is, commanding the spirits, don't let me know.
Not. Yes, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. The timetable the Lord is on does not need to be sped up. He wants things done in the order where everything will come down to the Passover finally, and he'll be crucified at the right time.
Whenever Jesus had a confrontation against the demon, he always showed the power over the demon.
Yes, that's power over the demons. Is that what you? Yes, that's right, Tommy. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. All right. Had some things I wanted. I actually went over this chart Wednesday night. I had about the prophecy from Isaiah 41. He shall not strive nor cry aloud, neither shall anyone hear his voice. Describes his reaction to his enemies. He's the Prince of Peace, did not excite warfare. And I've quoted from Brother Bowles, it's this characteristic in Jesus that separated Christians from carnal warfare. And then, so that's his reaction to his enemies. Reaction to his friends, actually his followers, a bruised reed, smoking flax shall he not quench, his encouraging care. We'll come back to that in a minute. And third, till he sends forth justice to victory, indicates Christ will continue his mission of mercy and forbearance, eventually triumphing over Jewish opposition, bringing hope even to the Gentiles through the gospel. I wanted to try to put that in a simpler form. I mentioned here, this was Jesus' first withdrawal for self-preservation. We did find him in Nazareth. He passed through their midst. He somehow got away. But this is a case where he's just backing up completely. And his quiet conduct, it fulfills Isaiah 42. I think I said 41 a while ago. Several ideas can be ascertained from this. First, in verse 18, that he is from God. We know that, but it's certainly emphasized here. He's from God. He works as God's servant, and his mission includes the Gentiles. Now, if you're still here in Mark 3, look here in verse 7 again. Great multitudes from Galilee, Judea, Jerusalem, where else? Verse 8. Idumea, that's Edom. Beyond the Jordan, that's Perea. Tyre and Sidon and Phoenicia. So these are areas where, would there be Gentiles included in these people? Surely there would be. And so his message, his work is going among the Gentiles as well. Then his reaction to his enemies in verse 19. His own personal character would be mild and gentle, not ranting or physically violent. And then reaction to his followers. A bruised reed he will not break. A smoking flax will he not quench. And the idea is, here are people who are bruised, so to speak. They're the fires of their light, so to speak, are burning very low. They're smoldering and there's smoke. And rather than just chop them off and put them out for no good, Jesus is trying to fan the flames and not to break off what's bruised, but to try to support it, try to hold it up. And I'll come back to this. His mission would be victorious. He would accomplish everything God desired for our good here and the hereafter, and then the Gentiles would have hope in him. It's easy, just 1 second, Tom. It's easy to kind of just gloss over these little passages, but they're just so wrought with wonderful truths that really state the character not only of Jesus, but the nature, and really come back to us in our following his pattern. Okay, Tom?
The gospel got down to Africa. The Ethiopian Union,
I'm sorry, say that one more time now.
I'm sorry,
That's-
I cannot take that.
That's okay. That's all right. What did you say, buddy?
The gospel got down to Africa.
Something about Africa, did you say?
Yeah, the gospel got that far.
But, one more time.
The gospel got down to Africa.
Okay, what? Okay. Gospel went to Africa, is that what you?
It got down that far.
Yeah, yeah.
The Ethiopian Union came to
Oh, okay, yes, okay. Thank you, Tommy, thank you, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. You had, in fact, you had, even on the day of Pentecost, you had people from all over, that would go back. And then you had as you mentioned, the Ethiopian would be Northern Africa. He would have come a long way to worship and wanted to know, who Isaiah 53 was talking about. Yeah, good. Simon of Cyrene, that's right. Yeah, so you have pockets of people hither and yon who are all a part of this. Real good. One other thing I wanted to, some applications that I want to show them out. Jesus' reactions to his enemies exemplify what ours should be. You've heard it said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and what? Hate your enemy. But I say what? Love your enemies. Do good to them that persecute you. Pray for them that despitefully use you, that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. He makes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust, the sun to shine on the good and the bad. And if you salute those who salute you, what reward have you? Ye then shall be perfect, even as your heavenly Father is perfect, perfect or complete in the sense of loving our neighbors. Let's look at these other passages. I don't want us to go over these, because I want to make a point on all this that I feel like maybe was lost on me years ago. Look at Romans 12. You know verse 1, present your bodies a what? A living sacrifice. And I take it to be that in the next really couple of chapters, including 12, is how we can do that, along with other ways. But in 17 through 21, Randy, if you would read that for us, please. Thank you, Randy. Quick question. Is there any difference between the instruction here and what we see exemplified in Jesus' life here in Mark 3, Matthew 12? None at all. Same idea. And I'll come back to that. Just a second. Tommy, let's go through these other passages. 2 Timothy 2, Sister Janet, if you will. 2 Timothy 2, 24 through 26. It's the latter part of second chapter of 2 Timothy. Okay? Yeah, okay, thank you. Lord's servant must not strive, be gentle, apt to teach, forbearing, in meekness, correcting those who oppose themselves. Correcting those who oppose themselves. We would say they're people who are self what? They contradict. Are y'all thinking with me? You're not. They're self-contradictory. They say things and then basically a conclusion they arrive at contradicts where they may even start with. And sometimes we'll poke fun at people like that. Well, you know, they meet themselves coming and going. Well, Jesus said, or the Lord here through Paul says, you know, deal with them, and you can show that. But, you know, insofar as poking fun, that kind of thing, be careful that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him unto his will. All right, so his reaction to his enemy. Guys, I was listening the other day when I was in the car. I was listening to Glenn Beck, and Max Lucado was a special guest. I don't know if any of you heard it. I think Thursday, Friday morning sometime. And he was asking, Glenn Beck was asking Max Lucado, who used to be, you know, a member of the church, and, well, I guess you'd still say he is, but he's a prolific writer. But he's gone off the deep end on a number of things. But Glenn asked him about all this stuff going on, all the political shenanigans and all this. How do you deal with it? And there was a pause there, I noticed. And I don't know if Glenn was explaining, well, we need to march or anything. He said we need to pray a lot, and we need to influence our people with the gospel. And I thought, you're pretty much right on. You know, what you don't resort to the same tactics that worldly people do. Paul said it in this way in 2 Corinthians 10, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty before God to the casting down of strongholds. And they're ideological. They deal with truth and the power of the gospel. That's how we deal with people. And so anyway, I really wanted to emphasize that because we're in a time where, you know, it's like fight fire with fire and get out into the mud with people. No, we don't do that. We follow Jesus' example. Okay, Tommy.
I've got a question. What about getting persecuted not for religious reasons? Should I take that too?
I'm sorry, what was that? I'm sorry, Tommy. My ears are not like they used to be.
If I'm persecuted without for religious reasons, should I take that?
Yeah, again, I think like we said a while ago, we don't invite it, you know. And there are times where we don't cast our pearls before swine, Matthew 5.
Some people that just downright me, they don't like the way you
Yeah, yeah,
look or something. They don't want to hurt you.
yeah,
Not for religious reasons.
yeah, and you just don't continue bearing down on them with the gospel. You know, you don't do that. Paul didn't, Jesus didn't. That if, and I think I would use the passage there in Matthew 7:6, cast not your pearls before swine, nor give that which is holy unto dogs. That there is a sense in which we present the gospel, but if it looks like, you know, they're going to, lest happily they turn and rend you, then back off. They're not interested in the gospel. We need to give everybody a chance, but then, you know, press it to the point, well, you should take it. No, you don't do it that way. Jesus didn't do it that way. In fact, he's telling them, you know, kind of let my works speak for themselves and let people follow. You look like you wanted to say something, Gene. Yes, yes. Yes, couldn't reason. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Well, I'd agree with that. You know, I guess I maybe use a little different. Right. Harm. Yeah. Yeah. and trying to make the timetable come on when the timetable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I wouldn't differ with that. Yeah. No, I wouldn't differ with that at all. All right, so his reactions exemplify what ours should be. His reactions to his followers exemplify what ours should be. We mentioned Galatians 6 Wednesday night. Y'all can quote that. Brethren, if any man be overtaken in a trespass, ye who are spiritual, what? Restore such a one in the spirit of gentleness. Consider, bear you one another's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ. Let's turn to the passage. We didn't look at this. 1 Thessalonians 5 deals with... 1 Thessalonians 5 deals with relationships with elders to start with, and then with everyone on various levels of spirituality. Brother Gene, 12 through 15, if you would.
What we request of you, brethren, that you appreciate those that diligently labor among you, have charge over you in the Lord, give you instruction, and that you esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Live in peace with one another. We urge you, brethren, admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with everyone. See that no one repays another with evil for evil, but always seek after that which is good for one another and for all people.
Yes, okay, thank you. 12 and 13 deal with the relation to elders, and then different other ones. Admonish the disorderly, those out of rank, those who faint-hearted, they can give up easily. Those who are having difficulties, they're weak, they need to be prodded and continually encouraged. And then be long-suffering toward everybody. Let that be a common denominator. And then whatever the case is, don't render unto anyone evil for evil. Don't fight fire with fire. Don't do that. But always follow after that which is good toward one another and toward all. I think that's a tremendous passage. The idea there, and I wanted to bring this out in relation, I didn't think about this until early hours this morning. In the idea of a bruised reed shall he not break, and smoking flax shall he not quench. There's the idea that he's trying to hold up what is right. Hold it, support it. I wanted to tell you that. I was talking to Lee about this early this morning. In my younger years, one of the fondest memories I had was to go to Huntsville to my mother's brother's place, my Uncle Harville. And he was a mechanical engineer, and he just had it in his blood. He worked for the Arsenal, and just a good man in a lot of respects. But my Uncle Harville he took a Model A Ford and restored it. There were so many things he had taken, and with some sanding here, a little welding there, and spray paint, it looked brand new. He restored a lot of things. He was able to conserve, and I just thought, whatever I do in life, I'd kind of like to be like my Uncle Harville in a lot of ways. And I tried it with some furniture, and early on, I haven't done it in a while. But the idea of restoration, of trying, here's a piece. A lot of people, if something, it's like the shoes I have on. I've had them resold 3 or 4 times. And last time I had them resold over in Homewood, they said, people are just buying shoes, and if they get a little, they just throw them away. They don't restore or put new heels on. We live in a throwaway society. And I say all that to say that a lot of times people, if there's something good, they just dismiss them rather than try to do what? Work with them, restore them, hold, and there comes a time when certainly we're to withdraw from the disorder. There we are to admonish the disorderly, warn them, do all that. There comes a time, if there's a rebellious spirit, we're to withdraw from them. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 6. However, in all of this, I just wanted to mention that. Then Lee had made the point this morning. She said, we hear quite a bit the idea of repurposing something. And that's what the Lord does with us. He takes us in one area, and when we're converted, we need to be turned and be useful in his vineyard, in his kingdom. Our talents are repurposed so to speak, all a part of that. Victory is eventually ours, though it may not look like it now. I think that's in the last part of the and then there's a continual thread between, and this is one thing I was telling Lee this morning. If I was taught this, and I probably was, and it just went in one ear and out the other. But here's an idea that I want you to really think about. You probably already have. Here we have the life of Jesus, Acts, and the epistles. And sometimes we'll think they're just, everything is separate. But what you have with the life of Jesus is really carried on in conduct through the works of the apostles when they were doing right. And then the real instructions of the epistles are not distinct from the life of Jesus. They just restate to various congregations and individuals really what it means to be following after Jesus. So I tried to try to put this in a sentence. There's a continual thread between Jesus' life as a pattern that we're to follow and the teaching in Acts and the epistles. Though separate insofar as biographical with the life of Jesus, historical with Acts, epistolary, they are not separate, disconnected parts or documents, but one continuous flow of revelation from God to man, demonstrating what he wants us to be. Best way I could say what I'm trying to think, and that is that what we are seeing in the life of Jesus is reflected in all the epistles. And so we go back to Jesus, we want to be like Jesus, and then the epistles emphasize various aspects where the primary recipients needed them the most. Comment, question? Okay, and then that's everywhere where these people were coming from, as Mark says, Galilee, Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, beyond the Jordan, all these, we just say all of Palestine for the most part was following. Okay, we'll have to stop. Comment, question?